It was heavier than most modern keys and felt weighty in my hand, almost like one of those old-fashioned ones you'd see in the movies. I half expected it not to work because it just looked so over the top. I took a few seconds and looked around, trying to get a feel for the place that was, at least for now, my new home. I didn't know whether I was going to stay here or not. Not that I really had another choice, not at the moment. But if I had to, I could sell the cottage and use the proceeds to make a new life somewhere else. Not that it promised to be much more entertaining than this. I wasn't sure I could go back to being a social worker, much less work for the CPS again. There were a couple of other cottages, each spaced by a couple 100 feet, with the same sort of dour look and fraying edges. They too had rocks for lawns. It probably took a lot of water to maintain any sort of lawn. I turned and looked at the haunted house, my hand on the key in my pocket. It wasn't exactly easy to turn around and flee back to Minnesota, especially at this time of night. Although my adopted parents had died a couple years ago, I could probably find someplace to live. But if I did that, then I had just wasted all that gas and put all those miles on Betsy for absolutely no reason. I sighed and tromped up the driveway, grimacing at the crunching of gravel underneath my feet. I really needed thicker shoes. Tennis shoes hadn't been allowed at work, so I'd worn a lot of flats. Flats did not really work well when you were walking on uneven ground. You could feel the sharp edges of the rocks digging into the undersides of your feet. I put the key in the keyhole and was surprised when it twisted to the right and opened. Well, wasn't that creepy? I half expected to hear organ music playing as I opened the door, except it was eerily quiet. I was sort of grateful for that. Otherwise, I would have suspected my great-aunt was a serial killer. The house looked about as unkempt as I would have guessed. The furniture, what I could see via moonlight shining in the windows, was covered in dust, and cobwebs crowded up near the ceiling high above. I was going to have a lot of work on my hands in order to turn this into something livable. Well, not livable. Something more than livable. Home. There was a knock on the door, and I jumped and turned around. Who was out at this time? It was almost midnight. Yes, I had taken forever to get there. I liked to take my own sweet time, thank you. The fact that I had absolutely no sense of direction was entirely unrelated. "Hello?" I said cautiously, moving so I could see the front door. Just in case it was a serial killer, I kept my hand on my cell phone. Dialing 911 probably wouldn't help much, but it made me feel better. Too bad I didn't have my mace. "Hello?" A girl came into view, moonlight casting a shadow at her back and making her difficult to see. She looked about my age, late 20s or so, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. She had long brown hair and kind, light eyes. However, those eyes were currently narrowed in suspicion and focused intently on me. I looked at her. "Hello?" I said again, as if that was going to change anything. "How did you get in?" the woman asked. Then her eyes flickered to the key in my hand. She didn't wait for an answer. "Where'd you get that?" I went and grabbed the letter from where I'd put it on the dusty desk and gave it to her. Maybe they thought I was robbing the joint. "I got this letter from my great-aunt a month ago," I said. "It just took me a while to get down here." The woman's face creased as she read the note, the furrow in her brow deepening. She looked up at me, not at all reassured. "This is your great-aunt Penelope?"